Hey, this is Chris Neal, and welcome to BasementRecordStudio.com. Alright, today we're talking about microphone recording and positioning. We're going to go through all the main instruments that you would use in recording a band or single artist or anything like that. Some of the microphones that would be good to go with, and some placement on where to put those microphones so that you or anyone you're working with knows what they're doing to get a very good recording. Now, with vocals, main things that you can go with are Shure Beta 58, SM58, and SE Electronics 5500, which I would strongly recommend because I use that many times and I really like it. And the Electro Voice RE20. Now, that's normally used for broadcasting, but I would recommend it because I've seen it used a lot. I've used it before, and especially for the price, I think it sounds very good. So those are just a few microphones I would go with for vocals. The Shure Beta 58 is used in a lot of live recording, or a lot of live performances, and then a lot of recordings. And then along with the SM58 is used in a lot of recordings as well. It's pretty much like the SM57, which I'm sure you've heard of, is like pretty much the standard. So I would recommend that as well. They actually do sound pretty good, especially for how cheap they are. So for a guitar cabinet, what I would go with possibly is a Royer 121. Those are ribbon microphones, and they work very well. They're used all over the world for live recording and live sound and stuff like that, and also for a lot of studio recording as well, and very high performance. I really enjoy using microphones like that. They sound great. Also an SM57 standard, Sennheiser 421. I've seen those used a lot with cabinets as well. Gets you a good sound going with it. Putting them all three together works very well, and we'll get more into that later on. For drums, one of the things I would recommend for the bass kick would be a AKG D112. The AKG D112 has a better frequency response for the lower end stuff, so it picks up that frequency very well, which I like a lot. I like using that. I've used it many times before. Usually just if the drummer's kick drum has the hole in it, then you put it right pretty much in there. You can either shove it way in there, or you can kind of like have it back a little bit depending on what you want. Pretty much it's what sounds good to you. Go with what you want it to sound like. So snare, SM57 is like the standard for snares. I don't know if I haven't seen many other people use anything else. I'm sure people use a lot else. I'm not doubting that at all. But the SM57 is pretty much the way to go for a clean snare sound that you want. That's also used for a lot of toms, and if not toms, then I would go with the Sennheiser 421. That one is like the standard for toms. You go into any studio pretty much with a drum booth, you're pretty much gonna find one of those sitting in there is a 421. So I would recommend that on the toms. For overheads, I would probably go with the Royer 122s. Now the Royer 122s for overheads work great. They pretty much are what I believe is another standard for room microphones and stuff like that, because they record a lot of all around instruments very well, and so they are able to receive that frequency that I like a lot on overheads. And you can position them in different spots, obviously, but I would recommend either that, or I would recommend an AKG 451. That works great too. And obviously, if you're gonna have left and right, I would recommend using two of the same, so two Royer 122s or two AKG 451s. I would not recommend using one and another. If you do it that way, then for one, you can get some weird volume differences, frequency differences. It just won't sound the same. and it might not be something you're going for. If it is, then great, but I don't think I'd ever want that. So I would recommend both the same microphones. You can also position just one straight up above. That works great too, and that'll also, if you can't afford two Royer 122s, which some of us can't, so I wouldn't recommend going out, and if you don't have any money, to try and buy two of those if you really can't afford it. So if you can afford one, get one. If you can't even afford one, then go with something cheaper. Like they have really cheap MXLs that you can go with. If you just need to get by, then go with something cheaper, obviously, and get two of those, just so you have better perception left and right, which is what I would recommend. Alright, so for bass, now you can go direct input, which they call DI, and that would be a great way to go in, and a lot of people will use compressors and things like distressors and sorts of outboard gear like that to give the DI a good quality sound for that low end bass that you want. Now, if you don't want to go direct input, which a lot of people don't, and a lot of people do more than one, they go with something like an AKG D12E. That is got another low frequency response, just like the AKG D112. Those both obviously are both used on each other's instruments that I'm mentioning here, like the bass drum or the bass cabinet. You can use either of them on either, but I would recommend using the D12E on the bass DI. I like the way that sounds, and you can either position it in the middle of the cabinet, or you can position it on the top left corner, kind of like on a guitar cabinet, where it kind of sounds good up in that top left. I like the way it sounds on the top left corner, because it's not as woofy, muffly kind of sounding or whatever. You get a better presence out of it, and you can try it anywhere you want, but that's just what I recommend. Alright, for keys, now usually I'm usually running through MIDI, and a lot of people will just go through MIDI. You should be able to have that option, but if you don't have the option of doing that, and you have to go in audio, so then I would recommend a left and right output of the keyboard, and go left and right in to two inputs on your interface, and then into your software from there, and then record it just like you would record a guitar or vocals or anything like that. And so if you don't have the ability to do left and right, then and you're just going to go mono, then you're going to have to suffer with that, and then just do the same thing, just go left single, mono. So go with that. So alright, now acoustic guitar, I would recommend a Royer 122 or an SE Electronics 5500 again, or a AKG 414, and there's obviously a lot more out there, but that's what I would recommend starting with. I like the way those sound on the guitars. There's a lot of other microphones that sound great on there, but those are the things I like. And also, you want to think about your price range here. With all these microphones, is if you can afford a lot more, then yeah, maybe go above standard, and I would strongly recommend going above standard. I would strongly recommend trying new microphones. Very, very good migrophones are out there, and you just need to listen to them and hear what they sound like. If you can get 12 microphones and listen to them all, and figure out one out of those 12 that you like the most, then great, do it. And if that's the most expensive one, great. If it's the cheapest one, great. Even better. But just figure it out that way. Trust your ears. All right, so now we're going to go and switch over to positioning. Now, for vocals, I would recommend being in a very quiet room, and I would recommend a very quiet room for pretty much any instrument. It's very important to not have a lot of bleed coming into your microphone. So you want a quiet area, and then the vocalist on vocals will obviously need to understand their voice. If they're really loud, they should back up. If they're really quiet, they should move in. And then obviously depending on the microphone, going side to side, changing the microphone's positioning is really important. You can have a microphone straight up and it'll sound kind of woofy or low end, a lot more depth to it, possibly a lot more color. You can turn it to the side a little bit, maybe like 45-degree angle, and it will usually cut off a lot of that frequency. It'll make it a lot thinner sounding. So if that's what you want it thinner, then you go thinner. If you want it more beefy, you go beefy. So I recommend for all these instruments, not only the vocals but every single one of them. Now on a guitar cabinet, off to the side, up top left corner, like I mentioned before, is really important. I would recommend it being off in the left top corner or right top or whatever, as long as it's not straight in the center, because a lot of times when you go straight in the center, it has too much to it. And the only time I recommend that is maybe like a live performance, when you we've had to do that before when our subwoofers blew out on a live performance. Well, what are we gonna do? Like, we can't, we can pretty much turn the bass guitar player up and try and give it a little more, but the best thing for us to do was to position the microphones differently. So that's very important to do that. Position the microphone more in the middle, and it'll give it a little more chunk to it, a little more beefiness, So moving on, going to snare, you want to have your snare, if you're using an SM57, you want to have the snare really close to the frame and then on the outside. So like looking at it like this, you want it to be something like this, and you don't want it to be so close where it's hitting, obviously, but you want it very close, and then either straight down like this off the side, or like that, or if it sounds good, over here, put it over here. Just whatever sounds good to you, go with it. And for toms, same as the snare. I would recommend the toms being pretty much the same for tom 1, tom 2, if you have a third tom, or the floor tom or anything like that. Obviously you can position the microphones differently to give it the sound that you're going for each one. 1 and 2 especially, I'd probably mic the same way, pretty much the same exact way, because you kind of want the same kind of sound. They're just a different tone, but they're not terribly off. It's not going from tom 1 to the floor tom. It's the floor tom you might want to have like in a position where it hits a lot lower end, it hits that frequency a lot better, so you might want to position it like that. And for the overheads, depending on where you want them, you can have them really close to cymbals if you want to have a lot of cymbal in your mix, and you can bring up and down the cymbal mix as much as you want there. And then if you want it higher up and you want a wider range of it, then yeah, you go higher up. If you want it forward, you'll hear a difference forward, or if you want it more back, you'll hear a difference way back here. You could have the 2 left being like this or way far out like that, or you could have a single mono being straight up top, back, forward, and so on. And then you can have room microphones as well, and then those room microphones pretty much act the same as overheads. They take the entire drum performance, and they are more of a wide sound. You hear a lot more of everything, but in this case it's catching more of the room tone off of the drums. So drums are playing, and the sound comes off and everything, and then all of a sudden it moves out, and then 10 feet away or 20 feet or whatever, however far you want it away, is that room microphone. You can have multiples of those. So that's what I would recommend for overheads, and also room microphones. Now for a bass guitar, same as a guitar cabinet, pretty much just either if you want it in the center, you can have it in the center. If you want it off to the left corner, have it in the left corner, and pretty much go from there and figure out what sounds great. If you want it turned a little bit, just like on any other instrument, turn it, figure it out. And for acoustic guitar, I would recommend the 12th fret is a very good spot to record. I like doing that a lot. Then also the bridge, and then the hole as well. Now you can do all 3. You can do 1, you can do 2, you can do whatever you want. And you can position the microphone again on the 12th fret. A lot of people like to position it kind of towards the hole, along with the bridge kind of towards the hole. And then with the straight over the hole, you kind of want to, a lot of times you'll turn it away from it a little bit, so that it's not too woofy, just like on any cabinet or vocals or anything like that, you know. So that's pretty much what I had for you guys today. And if you have any questions or comments at all, please let me know. All right, you guys have a good one. Bye.